My name is Rachel, and at 31, I never thought a simple text could shatter me, sweetheart. We're postponing the trip until next year. 2 days later. My feed exploded with their sun-drenched beach smiles. Family time is priceless. While I stood behind my cafe counter, heart pounding. They didn't forget me. They chose to leave me out. Before I share how I confronted their lies, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever been betrayed by those you love most, hit that like button. And subscribe to see my next move. I had juggled work schedules, cut back on every non-essential expense, and counted down the days like a kid waiting for Christmas. I called my mom immediately. And when she picked up with a sigh, I already knew. Rachel, I know you're disappointed, but things are just tight right now. We can't swing it. I swallowed hard. I understood what money trouble looked like. I had been working extra shifts at the diner just to help cover my part. I had even offered to pay for my own ticket. But the way she said it, like the decision had already been made without me. Like I wasn't even part of the conversation, hit harder than I expected. I took a breath and tried to offer a solution, suggesting a cheaper hotel or shortening the trip, but she hesitated only briefly before answering, in that same final tone. It's just not the right time, she said. We'll make it happen next year. I promise. A promise. One I should have known better than to believe. 2 days later, I was on my lunch break at the cafe when I opened Facebook and felt my stomach drop. There it was, a photo of my mom and dad smiling on a beach. My chest tightened as I stared. Sun-kissed skin, sunglasses, tropical drinks. The ocean sparkling in the background. I scrolled. More pictures. My brother Tyler and his girlfriend posing on a boat. My parents enjoying lobster at a fancy restaurant. And then, the caption that made my blood go cold. Family time is priceless. Family time. Except I wasn't there. Because there was no postponement. They had just gone without me. And lied. I locked my phone and sat frozen behind the counter. Realizing the truth. I wasn't forgotten. I was excluded. I wanted to believe there was some kind of explanation. Maybe it was a last-minute trip someone had gifted them. Maybe plans changed suddenly. Maybe they truly meant to include me and something unexpected happened. But deep down, I knew. They hadn't postponed anything. They had simply decided not to bring me. That night, I didn't call my mom. I didn't ask for an explanation. I didn't comment on any of the photos. Instead, I watched in silence as more and more images filled my feed over the next few days. Tyler snorkeling in crystal clear water. My parents roasting marshmallows by a beach bonfire, their arms around each other, smiling like the world was perfect. With every new post, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about one vacation. It was about every time I'd been overlooked. Every holiday where my gifts felt like an afterthought, while Tyler got exactly what he asked for. Every birthday call that came late or not at all. Every time I adjusted my life to help them out while they barely noticed. I clenched my jaw, letting that truth sink in. They thought I'd be hurt, sure. But they also thought I'd do what I always did. Let it go. Pretend it didn't matter. Sweep it under the rug like I had so many times before. But this time, something shifted. I was tired of being the one who understood, the one who made excuses, the one who was easy to leave out, because I wouldn't raise my voice. They didn't know I had seen the pictures. So I waited. I waited for them to come home. A week later, I heard the taxi pull into the driveway. I stood at the kitchen window, arms crossed, watching as they stepped out with their suitcases, tanned, relaxed, happy. The trip had clearly been everything they wanted it to be. The front door opened, and my mom spotted me. Rachel, she said, her voice too bright. Oh, sweetheart, I missed you. How've you been? I stared at her, my expression flat. Busy, I said, and I meant it. Busy pretending I didn't see what they had done. My dad followed her inside, setting down his bags like nothing was wrong. That's good, he said casually. How's work been? I let out a short, humorless laugh. Work. That's what he wanted to talk about. Work was all I had done while they were gone. worked and scrolled through pictures of the family vacation I wasn't invited to, pretending it didn't hurt as much as it did. Then Tyler strolled in behind them, stretching and yawning like he'd just woken up from a nap. "Man," he said, rubbing his eyes with a smirk, "travel takes it out of you. Hope you held down the fort while we were gone." My gaze snapped to him. While we were gone. Like it was normal. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't spent the last week piecing together the realization that they had chosen to leave me behind. I took a breath, trying to steady my voice. No more pretending. "So," I said, turning to my mom, "how was the trip?" She blinked at me, surprised. "Oh well. You know, it was just a little getaway. Nothing too special." Liar. I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and pulled up the photo album. Without a word, I turned the screen toward them. The beach selfies, the boat ride, the seafood dinner, and finally, that caption. "Family time is priceless." I tilted my head. Looked pretty special to me. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. Then my mom let out a nervous laugh. "Rachel, I don't," I said sharply. My dad stepped forward, trying to soften his voice. "Look, sweetheart, it wasn't." "Stop." My tone was colder than I expected, but I didn't back down. "Just tell me the truth. You didn't postpone anything. You just didn't want me there?" For a moment, guilt flickered across my mom's face, but she quickly replaced it with a shaky excuse. "It wasn't like that, honey. We just thought—" "What?" "That I wouldn't notice." My voice rose. "That I'd believe whatever you said and smile through it." I saw it now, crystal clear. They didn't think I'd confront them. They were wrong. Tyler rolled his eyes and let out a loud sigh, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Oh my God, Rachel, are you seriously making this a big deal? It was just a trip. Just a trip." The words hit me like a slap. A trip I'd planned with them. A trip I'd saved money for, rearranged my entire work schedule around, and counted down the days until. I shook my head slowly. "You could have told me the truth. You could have said something, anything. But instead you lied. You looked me in the eye and told me it was postponed, like my time and my feelings didn't matter at all." Tyler scoffed again. "You're being dramatic." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "No, Tyler, I'm finally being honest." My mom reached out, trying to take my hand, her face soft with practiced concern. "Rachel, please." I pulled my hand back before she could touch me. "No, not this time." My voice shook. But I didn't stop. "This isn't just about the trip. It's about every time you've made me feel like I didn't matter. Every Christmas where Tyler got exactly what he wanted, and I got a candle or a gift card. Every birthday you forgot until the last minute. Every time I gave up something for you all, thinking maybe, just maybe, if I did enough, I'd finally be enough for you." The room went still. My mom opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, she sighed. "Rachel, it's not like we love Tyler more than you." I smiled tightly. The kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Maybe you don't. But that's how it feels. And you've never cared enough to notice." Another long silence settled over the room, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. I nodded once, more to myself than to them, then exhaled. "Got it." Without another word, I grabbed my purse and walked toward the front door. "Where are you going?" My dad called after me, but I didn't look back. "Somewhere I'm actually wanted." And with that, I walked out, this time for myself, not for them. For the next few days, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, texts, voicemails, all from my parents and Tyler. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. And more importantly, I wasn't going to be the one to fix things this time. I'd spent my whole life playing that role. Keeping the peace, smoothing over awkward moments, downplaying my hurt just to keep everyone else comfortable. But now, for the first time, I was choosing silence. At first, their messages were stern and dismissive. My mom wrote, "Rachel, we need to talk about this. You're making this into something bigger than it needs to be." My dad followed up with, "Ignoring us won't change anything." Call your mother. And Tyler, true to form, texted, Jesus, Rachel. Get over it. You're acting like a child. I rolled my eyes at that one. Classic. They weren't sorry. They were just uncomfortable. They didn't want to deal with the consequences of what they'd done. They just wanted me to go back to the way I'd always been. But I didn't bend. I didn't reply. I held that silence like a shield, and surprisingly, it started to feel good. Freeing. Then, slowly, the tone of their messages began to shift. My mom sent one late at night that simply said, Rachel, I feel awful. I can't sleep knowing you're upset with us. My dad's messages softened too. We should have handled things differently. Let's talk when you're ready. And then another from my mom. One, miss you. We never meant to hurt you. For a moment, I almost answered. Almost. But then I asked myself the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind since the beginning. If I hadn't seen those Facebook posts, if I hadn't caught them, would they have ever told me the truth? Would they have felt guilty at all? The answer hit me with a painful clarity, no. They wouldn't have said a word, and that was all I needed to know. So I locked my phone, turned off notifications, and let the silence stretch a little longer. This time, it wasn't a punishment. It was protection. It wasn't easy at first. Silence felt unnatural. I had spent so many years being the one to reach out, to check in, to make things right. Ignoring them went against everything I'd been taught about being a good daughter. Guilt crept in like muscle memory, whispering old thoughts. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe you should be the bigger person. Maybe you should just let it go. But every time I felt that pull, I thought of the text saying the trip was postponed, and the pictures of them laughing on a beach without me, and I remembered how easily they had excluded me. Then the guilt would fade, replaced by something stronger, resolve. By the 5th day, they still hadn't let up. Their messages kept coming, some full of guilt, others laced with pressure disguised as concern. But I stayed quiet. I needed space to think, to feel, to figure out who I was outside of always trying to earn their affection. Then, without asking for anyone's opinion, I booked a weekend trip of my own. Nothing extravagant, just a quiet cabin in the mountains a few hours outside the city. I packed light, books, my journal, a warm sweater, and left early Saturday morning without telling anyone where I was going. For once, I didn't ask for permission or explain myself. I didn't wait to be included. I just went. The drive was peaceful. The roads winding through trees, still holding on to their last bits of autumn color. When I arrived, the cabin smelled like cedar and clean sheets, and the silence that had once felt heavy now felt like peace. I spent those few days doing absolutely nothing for anyone but myself. I made tea, read until I fell asleep, wrote about everything I'd kept bottled up for years. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for needing space. When I got home, my phone was full of missed calls and unread texts. But I didn't rush to respond. I wasn't ready yet. I was still learning what it felt like to finally put myself first, and I liked it. They weren't used to this version of me. The one who didn't respond right away, the one who didn't rush to smooth things over. And when my silence lasted longer than they expected, they did what I knew they eventually would. They showed up. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, and I was sitting on the couch with a mug of coffee when I heard the knock on the door. I didn't jump. I didn't feel that usual jolt of anxiety or obligation. I just sat there for a moment, steadying my breath before getting up. When I opened the door, my mom and dad stood on the porch, not angry, not accusatory, but tentative. Nervous, my mom clutched her purse with both hands, her smile small and unsure. "Sweetheart," she said gently. "Can we come in?" I didn't move. "That depends," I replied evenly. "Are you here to actually listen, or to tell me I'm wrong for feeling hurt?" My dad shifted uncomfortably beside her. "We're here to talk," he said. "Really talk." I studied their faces for a moment. They weren't demanding. They weren't brushing aside my feelings. For the first time, They looked like they were asking to be let in, not just physically, but emotionally. I stepped back and opened the door. "Fine," I said. "Come in." We sat in the living room, the air thick with everything unsaid. My mom perched on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. My dad stood awkwardly near the armchair, like he wasn't sure if he should sit or not. I crossed my arms and waited. Finally, my mom broke the silence. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted. "The truth is a good place," I said quietly. She flinched, and my dad let out a slow exhale. "Why messed up?" he said simply. I blinked. I hadn't expected him to say that. My mom nodded slowly, eyes downcast. "When we said the trip was postponed, we lied. No excuses. No spin, just the truth. And it hit harder than any apology ever could." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why?" I asked, even though I already knew. My mom looked at her hands like the answer might be written there. "We thought it would be easier," she finally said. I clenched my jaw. Easier for who? The silence that followed was my answer. My dad shifted his weight, his voice low. "We didn't think it would hurt you this much." I let out a bitter laugh. "You didn't think at all." My mom's voice cracked. "We just assumed you'd understand." There it was, understand. That word again. The word they always used when they didn't want to deal with the fallout of their choices. I leaned forward, meeting their eyes. "Tell me the truth. If I hadn't seen the photos, would you have ever told me?" Neither of them answered. That silence hit me harder than anything they could have said. I nodded slowly, the sting in my throat growing sharper. "Do you even understand what that felt like? Seeing you all out there having fun without me, realizing I wasn't even considered." My mom's eyes filled with tears. "Rachel, we love you." I shook my head. "You don't treat people you love like that." My dad rubbed the back of his neck, clearly at a loss. "We failed you, sweetheart. We should have been honest." I stared at them both. "Why are you really here?" I asked, voice low. "To apologize? Or to make yourselves feel better?" There was a long pause. My mom finally said, "Both." At least she was honest. We sat in silence again. The weight of everything we'd never said sitting between us like a wall. Finally, she said, "I don't know how to fix this." And in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need them to fix it. I just needed them to acknowledge it. To understand that things couldn't go back to how they were. "I don't know either," I said quietly. "But I do know this. I'm not going to be the one to fix it for you." My dad nodded slowly, and for the first time, I think he really heard me. My mom wiped at her eyes, her voice soft. "What do we do now?" I looked at her, not with anger but with clarity. "That's up to you," I said. For so long, I had been the one reaching out, initiating every conversation, repairing every crack. But this time, I was done playing that role. They thought showing up and saying sorry would fix it all, but apologies were easy. What mattered now was what came next. After they left that afternoon, I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel like everything was magically better. The apology was a start, yes. But I'd heard apologies before, and they had always come with empty promises. This time, I wasn't going to let words be enough. I didn't text them first. I didn't send updates about my life. I didn't check in to see if they needed anything. I waited to see what they would do when the fixer was no longer doing the fixing. A few days passed, then a week, then 2. Nothing. And as much as I told myself not to expect anything, part of me had hoped. But the silence on their end, after everything, still hurt. Still confirmed what I had feared. If I wasn't the one holding the family together, no one else would. But then, on the 3rd week, something shifted. It was a Tuesday, gray and drizzly, and I had just gotten home from work when my phone buzzed. A missed call from Mom. Then a text. "Hey, sweetheart. Just thinking about you. Hope your week's going okay." I stared at the screen, unsure how to feel. For once, she hadn't called to ask for something. She wasn't guilt-tripping me. She was just reaching out. The next day, my dad texted too. Miss you, kid. Let's get dinner sometime. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure I was ready. But I couldn't ignore the fact that, for the first time in a long time, they were actually trying. Not just reacting to being caught. Not just covering their tracks. Trying. And that meant something. Not everything, but something. I agreed to dinner, not because everything was forgiven. And not because I was ready to pretend like nothing had happened. But because I needed to see if they were serious. We met at a quiet little restaurant, tucked into the corner of a shopping plaza. The kind of place that didn't draw crowds or noise. It was just the three of us. Tyler wasn't there, and honestly, that small detail mattered more than I expected. They had listened. They had remembered. We sat down, ordered our food, and for the first time in years they asked me about me. Not about work schedules, not about what errands I could help with, just me. My mom asked what I'd been reading lately. My dad asked how my shift had gone. They were simple questions, but they felt new. I didn't drop my guard completely. I didn't let myself believe it was fixed. But for once, they weren't dominating the conversation. They weren't brushing past me. They were listening. Halfway through the meal, my mom cleared her throat. "We've been thinking about what you said," she began carefully. "About how we've treated you." I took a sip of my water, unsure whether to brace or soften. She continued, "Realize that we've always assumed you didn't need us the way Tyler did. That because you were strong and independent, we didn't have to put in as much effort." I met her gaze, trying to read whether this was another excuse or something real. "And now we know that was wrong," she added. My dad nodded beside her. "We see it now, Rachel. We do." I sat with their words for a moment. They were the kind of words I'd waited most of my life to hear, and yet, hearing them didn't bring the immediate relief I thought they would. I'd been disappointed too many times to let go of my caution. Still, something in their tone felt different. Not rehearsed or performative, but slow, uncertain, real. By the time dinner ended, I didn't feel healed. But I felt heard. And for now, that was enough to take one small step forward. Dinner had gone better than I expected, but I wasn't naive. One meal wasn't enough to erase years of being overlooked. I wasn't looking for a grand gesture or some dramatic apology. I'd had enough of words. What I wanted now was proof. Real, consistent effort. If they truly wanted to repair the relationship, they had to show up differently over time. The first real test came just a week later, my birthday. And if my family had a pattern, it was that birthdays in our household were never exactly fair. Tyler's birthdays were full-blown productions. Balloons, parties, steak dinners, the works. Mine? A text, maybe a late phone call, and once, a regifted candle. So I told myself not to expect anything. I even made plans to take myself out to lunch alone, just so the day wouldn't feel empty. But then, at exactly 10 in the morning, there was a knock on my door. I paused, confused. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my mom and dad were standing there with a store-bought cake and a small bouquet of flowers. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," my mom said, her voice a little uncertain but genuine. My breath caught. They remembered. And not just with a text or a phone call. They came in person. I stepped aside and let them in. We didn't do anything fancy that day. Just sat around my apartment, ate cake that was a little too sweet, and talked. But it was real. There were no distractions, no rushed goodbyes, no sense that I was just an obligation. For the first time in years, I felt like they wanted to be there. And that in itself was the gift I hadn't dared to hope for. A few weeks later, they showed up again. Not at my door, but in a different way. I had a big presentation at work, something I'd mentioned once over dinner. I didn't expect them to remember. But the morning of the presentation, I got a text from my mom, "Thinking of you today. You've got this." And then one from my dad, "Proud of you, no matter what." That morning, I cried in the break room, because they remembered. They had never done that before. Remembered the small things, the details that mattered only because they mattered to me. I wasn't used to it. For years, I had trained myself not to expect much, not to hope for more than the bare minimum. But now they were trying. Not perfectly. There were still moments where old habits slipped through. My mom still occasionally made excuses for Tyler, and my dad still struggled to say anything beyond a short text. But the difference was, they caught themselves. They noticed. They tried to do better. And for me, that mattered more than any apology ever could. One night, a few months later, my mom called just to talk. Not to ask for a favor. Not to guilt me into visiting. Just to hear my voice. At some point in the conversation, she said softly, "I know it's going to take time for you to trust us again." I swallowed, the honesty in her voice catching me off guard. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It will." There was a pause, and then she added, "We're not giving up, Rachel. You matter too much to us." And for the first time, I believed her. I believed she meant it. Change hadn't come overnight. It hadn't come with tears or big declarations. It came slowly, in the way they showed up, stayed quiet, and listened. It came in remembering birthdays, in supportive texts in silence that wasn't filled with blame. Weeks passed. Then months, and they kept showing up. I didn't feel like an afterthought anymore. I didn't feel like I had to earn my place. One evening, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea, and my phone buzzed. A message from my mom, "Thinking of you. How's your week going?" It was simple. No drama. No agenda. But that message wouldn't have existed a year ago. And somehow, that made it everything. For so long, I had waited to be seen, to be chosen. But in choosing myself first, I had finally taught them how to show up for me. And this time, I didn't have to beg for it. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest, not out of cruelty, but out of carelessness. And for too long, we stay quiet, hoping they'll notice. But healing begins the moment we stop begging to be included and start choosing ourselves. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone who keeps forgetting it. If this story touched something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. We see you. And if you're ready for more stories that speak truth, healing, and strength, don't forget to subscribe. Your voice matters here.